Hello, my name is Diana Ulrich, and I will be talking to you today about the movement against the United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare for sterilization of poor, minority, Native American, and Puerto Rican women in the 1970s. History of forced sterilization. Sterilization abuse is when a woman does not know that she is being sterilized. Sterilization can be found back all the way to 1907 in the United States. The government had the right to sterilize the insane, feeble-minded, and those with diseases that were dependent on the government. The women did not have to give their consent for any kind of sterilization, and the government could also sterilize those who could not regulate their own reproduction. Misinformation was commonly used, and reversible procedures. Women were told that if they had the procedure and then decided to have another child, they could have the procedure reversed. Buck versus Bell, 1927. Pachowski states that in 1927 the Supreme Court upheld the Virginia state sterilization laws. This led to increased sterilization worldwide. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes' reaction to the outcome of the case was that 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. So it was surprising to hear a Supreme Court judge stating something like that. The women's movement of the 60s, the women's rights movement of the 60s brought to light concerns over sterilization and abuse on women. We're going to go further into the types of abuse on women, but right now we're going to go into eugenic boards. In the early 1900s, the eugenic program was established. The United States was hoping to perfect the gene pool, a society without crime, helplessness, mental illness. The Eugenics Board hoped that if the poor, minorities, and mentally ill people were kept from having children, then all of society's problems would disappear. The Eugenics Board is review petitions for sterilization. The petitions came from the government or a private agency, and sterilization were used on unwed mothers, mentally disabled, and the poor of the communities. A select board is selected under the Eugenics Board. Pachowski stated if the country was working under eugenics, then the poor, minorities, epileptics, manic depressives, prostitutes, alcoholics, homeless, and criminals were targeted. Minority women. Native American, Black, Puerto Rican women were targeted for mass sterilization. Women and men in mental institutions and jails were sterilized. No consent was given. They just went in and sterilized them. Women in Puerto Rico were used for drug experiments. They would go to Puerto Rico. They used the women for experiments on the birth control pill. Other pills other medications were taken over there and used on these women for drug experiments to see how they would react. 3 women died in Puerto Rico because of taking drug experiments with the pill. North Carolina, 1929 to 1974, 7,600 black women were sterilized. 7,600 women were sterilized. 40% of them were black women. And Native American women ages 15 to 44 were sterilized. They were told they would go in for routine checkups. Some would go in for appendectomies. Some would go in and have children, C-section, and they would go ahead and they would sterilize them without their consent. United States Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, HEW. The HEW was created on April 11, 1953. These guidelines were established for women under 21 years of age and for those who could not give their consent when it came to sterilization. The HEW published guidelines for sterilization procedures. Women had to wait 72 hours after signing the consent form. Women could not lose their welfare benefits for not signing the form, and women had a right to change their mind about the procedure even after they had signed the form. The Health and Hospital Corporation, HHC. The HHC was the overseer for the city hospitals. They played an important part in the monitoring of sterilization practices. The HHC hospitals had to offer counseling to those women who opted to be sterilized. And counseling sessions would be given in the tongue that the women spoke, and the paper would be given to them in the tongue that in the language that they spoke and read. Public Law Number 37. The New York City Council in April of 1977 passed Public Law Number 37. The HHC guidelines became the law of the city. Both private and public facilities had to comply to the guidelines. What made Public Law Number 37 unique was that it also included men as well as women in the regulations. So no longer could they go into the mental institutions and sterilize the men, and no longer could they go into the jails and sterilize the men. They had to get their consent from here on out. Thank you. I hope that you enjoyed this and look into it more because there's so much more on it. Thank you.